Let's talk about resume design. Now, as you may know, in our industry, the portfolio is a really important element of finding a job or landing that ideal client. But resumes are still very important elements that are going to enable you to land the ideal job which you're dreaming of. In order to make this process easier, I wanted to give away for free a mini course, which is this video right here. Of course, we're going to give you all the basics knowledge in order to create a resume which is going to stand out from the crowd, that is going to enable you to get your ideal job or freelance design projects. Now, this is actually part of a mini course which I recently created. So if you're interested in learning more about the entire course, check the link in the description. But now without further ado, let's jump right into the very first video of this series where we're going to learn how to create an amazing resume from scratch. Now let's talk about successful design resumes. And in this video, we're going to describe what is a design resume, why you need one, when you don't need one, and also some advice regarding my past 10 years of experience in the design fields, since I hired several designers and passed through many resumes, and of course I created a lot of resumes myself. So let's get started and let's talk about what is a design resume. And in essence, a resume is a formal document that provides an overview of your professional qualifications, and this might include your relevant work experience, skills, education, and even notable accomplishments. Usually it's paired also with a cover letter, and it's a resume in essence helps you demonstrate your abilities and convince employers that you're qualified and hireable as a designer. And did you know that the spelling of resume actually originates from French and means summary? To this day, the purpose of a resume is still to provide employers with essentially a summary of your relevant qualifications. So whenever you're applying for a design job, you need at least some sort of a resume to be considered for the position. Although a traditional resume might not always be required, since these days you can also use digital resumes platforms alternatives such as LinkedIn. Now, on a base level, a resume is made up of 5 parts. First one is going to be the contact details, then the introduction, educational background, work history, and relevant skills. And by no means it needs to be in that specific order. Now let's talk about why you actually need a resume. Although you already might have some basic understanding based on what we just discussed, I need to add that a strong resume communicates your qualifications and sets up for your design career success. Now, the goal of your resume is to convince employers that you're worth interviewing. And essentially, it's going to be a stimulus, something which is going to help you get to that point. To that end, your resume is a valuable tool you can use to highlight your experience to prospective employers. And if your resume provides a concise summary of your relevant qualifications and skills in a format that makes you ability to handle the work as clear as possible, you will get more interviews. Now, in my personal recommendation and also in my previous experience, I know that in the design industry we have design portfolios, and that is where usually designers focus most of the attention, and rightfully so. But in my personal experience, the resume is really important as well, so it shouldn't be overlooked. You shouldn't just focus on the portfolio projects and work alone, since a resume can really help you stand out. Especially, I think that in the design field, you shouldn't really create really long resumes, which are usually considered the CVs. But it should be concise, maybe like 1 page ideally, or maximum of 2 pages, and just give a brief summary of your work experience and showcase why you would be a good hire or a good person to take upon a specific design project. So we're going to continue and we're going to explore these concepts in much more detail in the following videos. In the previous video, we discussed what an ideal resume design should look like and what are the essential elements. And in this one, we're going to talk about the things that you should avoid and that you should not add into your resume. So let's get started with the very first one, which is going to be too much information. Now, the natural tendency is to add all of the work experience, education, and everything that you've done in your career, because the normal idea is that more is better, but sometimes this can actually work against you. Now, there isn't really a specific amount which is set in stone as to how much information or how much elements you should communicate, but keep in mind to keep that principle of minimalism and simplicity across your resume. So always keep it around, in my personal opinion, 1 page. If you really want to push it, go with 2 pages, but try not to add anything which you don't think is going to be relevant to your potential client or employer. Now, another thing which you definitely want to avoid is solid walls of text, and this, as designers, we might already know that it's something which is a no-no, especially if you're dealing with print design or even web design. You already understood this principle, most likely. But as a reminder, try to avoid solid walls of text. So having a lot of text in one place, try to just keep the essential informations and try to think about how you can divide and better differentiate text visually. So using things like bullet points or numbered points can really go a long way in your resume design and the first impression that it's going to make. Now, another thing which is definitely a no-no is spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. Now, I get it. I myself am not a native English speaker, and many of you might not be, but one tool which you can definitely leverage in order to solve this issue is Grammarly. And Grammarly, there's a free version, and what it is basically an app or a Chrome extension which you can install, and it's going to check the grammar for you. Now, on top of that, you could have someone who is a native speaker check your resume for you. That would definitely be a nice add-on, but in my opinion, with Grammarly, you're going to solve 99% of the problems. So definitely check it out. There's the free version. There's also the premium version. In my opinion, it's not needed for this specific case. So just keep that in mind. Another thing which I would recommend you not to add in your resume is your age. And the reason being is that it could work against you in some instances. It's just adding more variables which aren't really relevant, that the employer doesn't really need to know in order to evaluate your skill set and your fit in the company or for that specific project. So I wouldn't recommend you to add your age nor your date of birth in your resume. And on top of that, I wouldn't add too many details about hobbies and interests, especially if you don't really have like hobbies and interests which are going to make you look good in one way, shape, or form in the resume. I would just not add them over there. It just comes down to common sense at the end of the day. So you're going to have to make that call. But just keep in mind that they are going to make some first impressions based on these elements as well. And they're not as much, they're not really relevant in several instances to someone who's evaluating you as a potential fit. Now, in some cases, you might have some hobbies and interests that are really going to make you stand out. So definitely keep that in mind, but don't add too much focus on this element alone. Now, on top of that, I also want to remind you not to add tiny text in the resume. I remember also when I first started out as a junior, I really liked the tiny text simply because it looked more elegant, in my opinion at the time. But you want to keep legibility in mind as the very first thing. And also you want to be conscious about the fact that some individuals who might not have like clear eyesight, so maybe someone elderly is going to look at the resume for the first time. So maybe, keep these things in mind and try to really put legibility before aesthetics when it comes to the resume. So really hope this was helpful and clear, and we're going to move on with the next videos. Now let's look at a live example of what I believe is a well-structured resume. Now this resume is from a website called Resume Genius, and essentially you can download it for free, but let's go right into the analysis. So the reason why I like this resume is that its structure is efficient and it communicates in a clear way the experience and all the core elements which we previously discussed. So when it comes to the design, maybe it's not my favorite design, but I would say that the resume has function before aesthetics. So always keep that in mind. It's not the color scheme which is going to make or break your application. You want to make your branding consistent throughout your website, resume, and collaterals, and so on. So as you can see, as we zoom in, the very first thing which we see is the role of this individual. And here I would assume there would be the name, of course, and last name. So immediately I can understand who is the application and what is the application for, what is the specialization of this person. So very clear, really like the emphasis, also using the background just to break up the layout a little bit and make it more interesting visually. Then over here we have a quick resume summary. So as you can see, this is I would almost see it as a mini cover letter. And matter of fact, this could actually save you from having to do a cover letter in the first place, since you're adding some information about you. And again, keep it minimal, keep it straight to the point. I really like this size. It's not like too much text, since you want to give the most amount of emphasis to your work experience, as we previously mentioned. And over here, you can see that this individual had 2 roles in the past, designer and then art director. He leveled up. And it's since he's been here for many years, there's quite a bit of things that he did. And I like the fact that he explained in bullet points what were his main skills and role within the company. So it's a chance not only to learn what the type of work he did, but also how he did it. So this is definitely a nice way to approach it. Once you have a lot of entries in the work experience, maybe you change jobs every 6 to 12 months, maybe you did more contract work, you're likely not going to have as many bullet points for each and every entry. But nonetheless, this is a structure which I think works really well. And then over here, we see almost in a order, in a hierarchy of importance, what are the main informations that you're looking to understand. So over here, we have the contact, and I like how it's very clear. He added the email, the phone, the address, and also the LinkedIn, which is another important element these days. Now, if it was for me personally, I would try to merge these together. I wouldn't really go too much into the soft skills, but definitely including some of the softwares which you operate with can be useful, especially if you're applying for a job where they have all sorts of different softwares that they're using already, of course, and you want to see if you can blend in with the team. But you can also kind of like mention a broad range of softwares which you'll be comfortable working with, and that you're looking forward also to learn more, because most likely they're going to have a one tool or another which you probably don't use on a day-to-day basis, but you always want to make sure that it's clear that you want to learn and that you're flexible in those regards. And then over here we have the education. So Bachelor of Fine Arts in 2011. I can already see that from 2011 he started working as a designer right away. So this is like also an attribute sign, and I can kind of like trace the history line in this resume. So overall, really solid. Does it have to be exactly in this structure? No, but you want to keep the core elements always in the resume, and just try and think about it from the perspective of the person who's reading this resume. In this video, I want to show you a free software that is going to enable you to create a resume in a very fast way, and that is Canva. Now, the reason why I prefer it over software such as InDesign or Illustrator is simply because you're going to see how fast it is to create a resume, and how easily you can tweak it and pretty much achieve any results that you want. So the very first thing that you want to do is to go on canva.com, and you want to sign up or log in if you already have an account. And essentially, if we look at resume, for example, you can see that the moment that I click on the resume, I'm going to essentially be redirected to the Canva editor, and I'm going to see all sorts of different templates right here. Now, the way that I recommend you to do it though is to go first on templates. And as you can see here, we're going to be able to browse a lot of free templates, and I'm going to write in resume. And the moment I select resume, which was the first entry, you're going to see that I can find dozens and hundreds of free templates. Now, granted, there are going to be some premium templates, which are these ones with the pro sign, but nonetheless, the free ones are the vast majority, and there's a lot of really good looking and well-structured free templates. So definitely there's a lot that you can do without paying a dime, which is always good. But again, if you want to go with one of the premium templates, feel free to do so. Now, we can simply select one of these templates. So let's select, for example, this one. And as you can see, I can easily customize this template, but as I scroll down, I'm going to see all sorts of different suggestions which are similar to the ones which I just selected. So my recommendation is, if you're looking to go with Canva, just have a look around and take your time to explore the different options which you have at your disposal. So when you find a template and you're happy with it, simply click on the template itself, and over here you're going to be able to essentially go ahead and change all of the elements which you need. So for example, the text, I can go over here, write UI UX designer, for example, and I can change the profile. So simply double click and you're going to be able to change these elements. Now you can also move them around and do all of the basic things which you might want to expect. If I double click, I'm going to be able to also change the image itself. So for example, I can simply upload a new photo, and the moment I drag and drop it on top of the shape is going to be substituted. So there's a lot that you can do with Canva, and it's a very easy way to create a resume in no time. And just before we wrap up this video, I want to give you a very brief introduction to Canva and explore some more of these features. So as you can see, Canva it's all about the side menu, meaning that you're here going to find all of the main elements. Here you're going to find the templates as we discussed at the beginning, so you can easily just select one and pretty much just copy it. You can replace your current design or add as a new page. Let's do that. As you can see, now we have 2 pages. Now I'm going to delete the page, so all of the page specific options are going to be right up here, and over here under the elements you're going to find the photos, the shapes that you can add, and even the graphics and all sorts of different icons. You can change the color directly from here. And again, we're going to go fast since I don't want to make this an entire Canva course, but just focus on the elements that you might need for a resume. Now, if you want to upload, for example, your personal image, you can do it from here. Now I need to sign up. I'm not currently signed up, so that's something that you will need to do, but essentially it's very easy. Once you upload it, you're going to find the image here, simply drag and drop it into the Canva and you're going to see it. Here you're also going to find all sorts of different photos. I can search here. For example, if I look for a resume, I can simply use this photo. I can resize it, I can crop it. So pretty straightforward. I can add text right here, for example, a heading or a subheading. So everything is drag and drop, as you can see. And a lot of the options are similar to your design softwares of choice, such as, Command C, Command V in order to copy and paste. You can also add audio and video. Of course, it's a resume, so you probably want to be doing that. You can also add backgrounds in here, and this, pretty straightforward. It's going to add a background of choice, and yeah, this would be pretty much it when it comes to the major elements, especially when it comes to the images. You're going to have filters, adjust options right here. So let's say that I want this background to be more bright or less or more contrast, saturation, more saturation, all those things. I adapt it from here. I can crop, I can flip it horizontally and all that. And then once you're done with your resume, simply click on download. You're going to have the options to export it in PNG, JPEG, PDF, PDF print, which is the suggested. If you're sending your resume around, which you're most likely going to do, I recommend you actually the small file size, simply because it's not going to take a lot of space and it's going to be faster to download. So simply click here, download, then once you sign up, it's going to export it directly, or actually it did that also without the sign up feature. And yeah, here you have your good resume that you created in a very fast and easy way. Hey guys, Piergi here, and in this video I'm going to review my old resume and basically tell you everything that I did wrong, and basically approaching it from a standpoint of would I hire this person or not, in the hope that you can learn some nuggets and tricks, especially if you're first starting out in UI UX design or web design. Now, as we previously discussed, the portfolio is very important when you're applying to a design job or a design project, but the CV or the resume is really important as well. And let's go through step by step what are the main areas where I basically focused on at the beginning. So at the beginning, I didn't have as much work experience. So I basically added the education and the course which I attended right here, and the work experience was right down. But this is actually a wrong thing, in my opinion, especially if you do have a work experience. And even if you don't have work experience, I would just add that you were working as a freelancer just to kickstart and have some sort of interest in the potential client. And essentially, the way that you want to do it is to bring the work experience on the top, because if I'm evaluating a designer, I'm actually giving more importance to the real world industry experience compared to the education. And I mean, it's definitely a plus if you've been to a good university, or you attended a bunch of courses, but I would definitely put the work experience and your portfolio above whenever I am selecting the criteria for hiring you or another designer. So this is definitely something which is really important in my opinion, and especially when it comes to the courses. So the rationale here is that I took quite a bit of courses on the side, as I was in high school and as I was in university, but I wouldn't actually focus all that much on the courses. And I would recommend you to put it at the very end of the curriculum and really focus on that work experience section. If you don't have the work experience section that big, you can start, you can actually add a paragraph or two describing what you did in order to really showcase your potential to the potential client, because that's really what the resume is all about, showing that you have some potential and that you can tackle and fulfill the requirements of that specific job. Now on the side, I also mentioned the languages spoken, which I think it's good, and especially when someone is hiring you, and it's not clear that maybe English is your first language or that you can work well with it. If that's a requirement of the job, you definitely want to make it clear. Now, of course, if your name is Robert Smith, and you're applying to a job which is in English, it's almost going to be taken for granted that you're English. So of course it really depends on the context, but something to consider. And another thing which I think is still good is that you add the contacts. Now you might be saying, hey, but the contacts are essentially going to be already added, since maybe I sent the CV via email most likely, so they already know how to contact you. But it's always good to leave contact touch points at any given stage, and it doesn't hurt to have one more contact touch point than one less. So definitely something to consider. And when it comes to the context and the awards, definitely add them into it. I wouldn't give a lot of weight unless it's very prestigious and big awards. And sometimes you might want to give some context as to what the contest or the award was about, since just adding the name, a lot of the times, especially employers who don't work in the design field, they're not really, don't have a clear understanding and knowledge of the different contests or awards. So even if you put a very prestigious award, I would say maybe they won't be able to appreciate it, since they don't have the knowledge of what that award or contest was about. So adding a few lines of text is definitely something that could be useful. Now on top of that, one thing which I'm missing here is personality. So I would highly recommend you to add a touch of personality by adding one or two paragraphs just describing who you are, your experience, what you stand for, and essentially all the other things which we discussed in the previous videos. So definitely something to keep in mind, because the resume is going to be a complementary accessory of the portfolio. So you definitely want to keep everything on brand, but always communicate those key elements which the potential interviewer is looking forward to hear from you in order to decide if they want to hire you or not.